Okay, looks like we're live now. So hi, my name is John Graves, and welcome. I'm the Senior Director of Operations here at ArtistWorks in California. I want to welcome you all to this month's ArtistWorks Google Hangout. In this Hangout, we're going to be talking with Tony Trischka, our banjo teacher here at ArtistWorks. We'll be giving out a promo code later in the show that will give you, everyone who's watching, 20% off at any ArtistWorks school. And one of you viewers will be chosen at random and win a year studying banjo online with Tony. We'll be announcing the winner a little later as well. So, also, I'd like to take a quick moment to thank the folks over at Deering Banjo, our sponsor for today's event. The people at Deering have been a great help in putting on today's production. So, let's get to the guests. Tony Trischka is one of our most senior artists here at ArtistWorks. This July will mark 7 years since the ArtistWorks Banjo School launched in 2009. He's a world-renowned performer, teacher, producer, two-time Grammy nominee, and has documented a lifetime worth of banjo and bluegrass history. I'm excited to welcome him to today's Google Hangout. Tony, good afternoon, sir.
Hi, John. Thanks so much. Hello, everybody.
How are you doing today, and where are you joining us from?
I'm in Fair Lawn, New Jersey, and the sun is shining, it's chilly, and I'm feeling really good.
Excellent. Okay. So along with Tony, we have a few guests joining us for the conversation as well that I would like to take a moment to introduce. The first is a world-renowned banjo player since the mid-1960s. He's worked with Jimmy Martin, Country Gazette, and the Flying Burrito Brothers, to name a few. And his playing has shown that melodic style can drive like crazy and have no limits. Alan Munde, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
How you doing today, Alan, and where are you joining us from?
I'm in my home in Munde, Texas. It's probably in the 60s outside. Beautiful.
Excellent. So also we are very pleased to welcome Greg Deering. He and his wife Janet founded the Deering Banjo Company in 1975, which today is the largest banjo company, the world's largest banjo company, having sold over 100,000 banjos since its inception. We've asked Greg to join us and share some of his banjo expertise in the conversation. So, Greg, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for allowing us to be here. We're having a great time getting to join you.
Of course. And tell us a little bit about that shirt you're wearing today.
Oh, I've been a Scoutmaster for 28 years, and our boys are having their annual leadership training weekend.
Right.
It's about 3 blocks from here, so I had to play hooky to come over to be part of this podcast.
Yeah, he's trying to be in 2 places at once today. We really appreciate you joining us. And finally, we're being joined by a longtime student of Tony's who's been studying and interacting with him online at ArtistWorks for almost 4 years now. Paul Fleming, welcome.
It's great to be here.
So where are you joining us from, Paul?
From sunny Las Vegas, and representing the Southern Nevada Bluegrass Music Society. So, a little plug.
Oh, cool. Okay, so now we're about to get started. I just want to quickly remind the viewers that this is a live stream hangout, and because of that, sometimes the audio and video aren't exactly crystal clear, so please be forgiving in the comments section. It's not a tech issue on our end, it's just kind of the nature of the beast. So thank you to all who are tuning in, and let's get started. We have a lot of bluegrass banjo talk discussion to be had. But first, I'm asking that Tony maybe start us off with a little performance if he feels so inclined. Tony?
All right. This is a tune called Catlin Hen.
Excellent. So I would ask how the tune got its name, Cackling Hen, but I think I can tell.
I think it speaks for itself.
That's a cool little technique that you did in there. All right, so that was excellent. And then we were going to ask if Alan Munde would please maybe play a quick jam before we get the conversation started. So Alan, did you have something picked out for us?
Sure, I'll play a little bit of a waltz, just to contrast from what Tony did.
Okay.
And goes like this.
Excellent. What's the name of that piece?
That is called the Monday Night Waltz.
Nice. Very nice.
My name.
Yeah. Very nice. Can we ask Kitty to tilt your laptop down just a little bit so that we can see your banjo just a little bit better in case you demonstrate something for us again, just a little bit. There you go. That looks great. Awesome. Okay, so thank you for both of you for those great performances. The first question I had, it's a common question that we see at ArtistWorks on any of our sites, especially on our banjo site, or our bluegrass sites, and Tony, the banjo site. What sort of suggestions would you give to someone who's trying to learn how to improvise? Is there any general advice or techniques to use, Tony?
Well, I would suggest, first of all, it's more of a state of mind. You have to be willing to sound terrible, which kind of goes against everything that you hold on to, because you want to play as well as you can, you want to sound as good as you can, and that's why people have a really hard time getting away from the printed page or just the way they know how to play it. So you have to. That's the kind of the first thing. And then in terms of playing bluegrass with something like Scruggs style, and I should mention actually before I say that even if you're just changing one or two notes, that's improvising. So it doesn't have to be like playing the tune completely differently than the way you used to play it. Or change one 8-note measure, and that can make a big difference. And if you learn some Scruggs licks, you can kind of plug them in, which is one of the aspects of Earl Scruggs' playing. He has a lick like this. And that's a really cool D lick that he plays, and he throws that in at various times in various tunes. So you might have an 8-measure period of D where you can just throw that in, like if you're doing 9-pound hammer. But then there are other licks like this that could go in the same place. So everything else could be the same, but you could put that lick in there or change it. If you have 4 or 5 D licks, throw those in there.
Right.
I'm not sure how much time we have to talk about this. I could go on for hours. But Alan, do you want to add something to that?
Sure. One sense of improvising is creating a new melody. So, if you learn to play melodies to songs, and learn what they are and kind of see what melodies are, and then you can move them around a little bit. For instance, if you played Red River Valley, like that, if you know that's the melody, you could move it up a third or up to the next whatever, like that. And now you've got a new melody that you've created rather than like that. That might be one way, is just to approach improvising as creating new melodies. And another quick trick that I do, if you look at the third string and you just played the notes that are at the position markers, you'll recognize those as, that's Quince Mountain backstep. Well, you could take those and just do a forward roll over and over, and then at opportune times just move between those position markers and just hear what you're doing. So it might sound like this. I'm sorry. Sort of like that, and just play around with it, and without any sort of set melody in mind, and just listen to what you're doing, and sort of try to capture good ideas and things, and you get sort of a sense of what improvising might feel like just within the context of one roll and one set of notes.
Right. Nice. Tony, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that? It sounded like you had maybe a little something else you wanted to say.
You could also try things which can sound a little weird sometimes, but if you just free improvise, I had a student who just did this recently with Scruggs licks. He wasn't playing a tune, he was just doing things like this. Just kind of playing it mostly on G, just playing various Scruggs licks that he was comfortable with. Or you can just totally free improvise and not have any preconception. Just put your fingers down anywhere on the neck, and it doesn't even have to be a place that you're comfortable with, that you're familiar with necessarily, Now, there's kind of a nice sound. I don't know if I've ever actually done that exact position and see, well, what would that sound like if I moved it down a fret? It sounds a little less pleasant. It sounds kind of jazzy. Or you can move one finger down. That's kind of pretty. And just try different things. Move one finger up a fret or down a fret, open up a string, and just put a roll to it. And that way you're not trying to conform to the rigors of a tune. These melody notes in this key. You can just be absolutely free, and it might loosen you up to improvise more when you're doing a more structured kind of improvisation. Not structured improvisation, but improvisation over a more structured tune.
Right. Cool. Before I forget, let me ask you to just, Tony, if you could scoot maybe like 6 inches to your right, because just a little piece of your banjo was getting cut off. But I think that was a great point, some great demonstration there. Let me quickly, before I have my next question all lined up, but let me quickly remind that the viewers, if you guys have any specific questions you'd like to ask, you can tweet them to @ArtistWorks, or you can also just ask them right there in the YouTube comments section, and I'll try to get them read to Tony and the gang here. So Tony and Alan and all, how do you go about arranging fiddle tunes for the banjo, and how do you decide to use melodic or single string style in the arrangement, or both?
Or I should amend that question to say, or Scruggs style, for instance.
Or Scruggs style, right? Okay.
Yeah, that in there. But Alan, do you want to field that question since I started the other one?
Sure. You know, in playing the melodic style, the first thing you need is a melody, right? So if you're going to learn a fiddle tune or anything, you need a melody that you want to play. And after you sort of discover the melody, you have to lay it out, you know, as Bill Keith pointed out, in sort of his string crossing method, where, you know, no two notes in a row fall on the same string, and no two notes in a row are played with the same finger of the right hand. So you just have to lay your melodies out like that, you know. And you do that with those covenants in mind until you run into a place where it's difficult. You know, it's not working out. You can't get two notes in a row on different strings, or you can't get them with your right hand to work out. At that point, you know, when you run into those little nooks and crannies of your fiddle tunes, then you have to decide what you're going to do to make those notes work, you know, since you have your notes set. And you either have to stop and do a single string passage, you know, for instance, or sometimes I'll do pull-offs. If I can't make a note, you know, work with these other things, I'll that sort of approach. And sometimes when the fiddle player plays a long note, you know, that seems like an appropriate place to play a Scruggs roll, you know, as if he were playing, you know, a sung melody that is sustained. So, you know, there are places in fiddle tunes where you would want to do that. And one comes to mind is Roanoke, maybe. On the second part, it goes something like that. Or rather than, you know, just playing literally, you might you know, play it in a roll fashion like that. So those are some ideas that you might look into or think about.
Right, okay. Tony?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's nice to try to take one tune, excuse me, and apply these different styles to that one tune. For instance, take a tune like Sally Gooden. You could do it the way Earl Scruggs did it, in kind of a Scruggsy way, because he was Earl Scruggs. That's the A section. So you can play it like Earl did it, and actually, he's playing the melody there. This is just something that someone pointed out to me a couple of years ago, which somehow I never realized. Because in the melodic style, you might play it something like this. Because I would always tell people that when Earl would play Sally Gooden, which incidentally was one of the tunes that he used to audition for Bill Monroe back in 1945. But he would kind of play the essence of the melody rather than playing every note of the melody, which in a fiddle tune, if you were giving a melodic style treatment, it would sound something like this. And then someone happened to point out to me that actually he is playing the melody as you sing it. Have little pie, have little pudding, gonna give it all to little Sally Gooden. He's playing the sung melody because Sally Gooden has lyrics to it. So he actually is playing the melody, but it's not in the melodic style. It's in Scruggs style, of course. So right there you've got Earl's version, then you have this melodic version. Something like that. But you could also do it in the so-called single string style, where you're hitting the same string 2 or 3 or 10 times in a row, depending on the tune, as opposed to the melodic style, which is, as Alan just said, you're always playing a different string. You're never repeating a string. So in the single string style, I'm playing it down the neck now. It could be something like that. And you get a completely different sound. So it's a nice way to vary what you're doing to get different ways to play the same tune, rather than just always having one set way.
Great. Okay, well, the viewers are sending in lots and lots of questions, so maybe I'll read a couple of those real quick. Let's see. The first is Alan or Tony. When I try to work on increasing speed, I get stuck at a level and can't seem to go higher no matter what. Do either of you have practice technique or method to help increase speed?
All right, I guess, well, I'll start, and then Alan, you can jump in. I had a gentleman, I always put it this way, he was really old, he was in his 50s. Of course, now I'm much older than that, but he would come for lessons, and he would come for a few months, and he always had his lesson down, and he could play all these tunes, but it was always kind of at a slightly slower tempo, and I said, after a few months, let's really try to get the tempo up, and I set the metronome at the tempo that he was comfortable with, and then had him play at that tempo, and he played it all the way through, and then I moved it up one click on the metronome, and he played it at that tempo with no problem, and then one more click, and I went on for about half an hour to 40 minutes, and after that length of time, he had basically doubled his speed, and he just needed something outside of himself to push him. He was just kind of at that slower speed, but once I got that metronome clicking, moving it up one click at a time, and he played it all the way through each time, again, after about half an hour or so, he had doubled his speed. I'm not guaranteeing that to the viewer out there, wherever you are, but it's something that I've had work with other people as well. Another thing that some people suggest is playing along with records, I was about to say, play along with a cloud or something like that on a tune, and it's, you know, it's not going to slow down, and if you can hang on, and but I think it's okay if you get to the point where it's getting a little bit sloppy. You want to have it clean at the slower tempo, but as you move it up to a faster speed, it may start to get sloppy. And maybe once it starts to get almost unplayable for you, keep it at that speed and play it 5 or 6 times at that tempo till you feel like you're really starting to, you know, hopefully after 4, 5, 6 times through, you'll start getting comfortable at that tempo. And just remember that every day that goes by, like on one day you may get to one tempo, and then the next day you can't quite play it at that tempo because, you know, our hands change every day, and for whatever reason, or the banjo's not cooperating, or whatever it knows, probably something else. But you know, there definitely will be forward motion.
Great. Yeah, I like that. I like that metronome technique a lot. It's just small steps, you know, rather than just saying, hey, I want to play this faster, and then setting your metronome 15 or 20 BPM faster, and then, you know, seeing how that goes. Alan, did you have anything you wanted to add or any tips?
Sure. You know, I agree with Tony on all of that, but I have something additional to add. A couple of things. Let me just comment on something Tony said about playing along with records. And a lot of times people will say, well, it's too fast, or I don't know it, or whatever. And I always thought, well, you know, the banjo at its heart is sort of a rhythmic drummer. You know, harmonic drummer, harmonic drummer. And if you, even on a song you don't know, if you just took the instrument and muted the strings and then played along in some fashion that was in tempo with the record, even if it was just doing this, you know, until you got into the groove, which is a real important place to be when you're playing music. And then when you felt comfortable with it, then start doing your roll. You know, you could play roll, and so you come out as sort of like this. You know, as a drummer might be, and you're participating in the music even though you don't know it. and you're adding to it, and you're using your muscles, and you're playing your roles, and you're training your muscles to have a sense of what it is to be a part of that event. So, you know, and as you get comfortable with that, then if you know the song or know the chords, you could add those things in as you go along. Then one other thing, metronomes are really great. I recommend them highly. I met a gentleman once who taught performance of all instruments. He was a piano player, but he taught singers and drummers and horn players and everything about performing. And he talked about speed. And he said he was trying to do I call it Tchaikovsky piano thing that had this huge long arpeggio on it, on the piano. And he said he would learn each note and finger it, and it'd be the left hand and then the right hand, then he would cross over and all the way down. He said he would do that, and he would try to speed it up a little bit and speed it up and speed it up, and he said it never sounded right. Until one day, sort of in frustration, he said, I just threw my fingers at it. And there it was. He said, I missed some notes, but the essence of what I was trying to do was there. So what he ultimately suggested was just to take a very short segment of your music, and rather than playing it slow and then speeding it up a little and a little bit more, it's just to relax and play it as fast as you can. You know, just go for it. Just a little short segment. It's sort of like, I forget what they call that in training, but you just run as fast as you can for a short distance and then you walk. And so it's that sort of thing. And he felt like what it would do would tell your body what you're wanting. Because he thought if you just sort of played slow and then a little faster, you never really gave your muscles and your brain a chance to know what you wanted. So he would just, that was his suggestion. And so that's just yet another thing to throw out there to try. You know, you can try them all, and whatever works, works. So that's it.
Great. And Paul, you've been studying online with Tony for 4 years now. What have you learned in this regard?
As far as picking up tempo?
Yeah.
One thing that I've found for myself that really helps, and I think Alan pointed it out, is relaxing. And when your hand has a lot of tension in it, you're just picking the notes. You're not feeling the notes. And if you can relax and feel the melody, feel the notes, it helps out a lot.
Excellent. Okay, so one more before I move on to my next question. Just one last question from a viewer. This one's for Greg Gearing from Ken Jewell. It says, I was wondering what musical themes you had in mind for the various models of banjos. I have a GDL from 1983, by the way, like the Eagle series or the Golden Era series, etc.
Well, our banjos are always inspired by customers asking for various things, and the GDL was our first move into pretty fancy banjos with abalone binding and the burl walnut and everything like that. But the Eagle was exploring a whole new technology in tone rings with Jens Kruger and I. And the Sierra has always been the banjo that we've wanted to be a top professional banjo at an affordable price. And most of what we do is we're trying to achieve the greatest value that we can in the model and bring the most banjo for the money to the player.
Right.
That's kind of a general statement. I could get more specific, but I could go on for hours too.
I bet. All right, cool. Well, thanks for that. And now, before I move on to my next question, just a quick announcement to all our viewers. So I promised earlier in the show that we were going to I'd be announcing a promo code. So I just wanted to tell everyone out there that if you type in Banjo 20, Banjo 20, Banjo 20, that can get you 20% off right now at any of our ArtistWorks schools. So if you want to learn from Tony online or any of our other instruments or genres that we offer, quick little commercial for you, Banjo 20. You know, you might as well get a little discount while it lasts. So next question for the group was, how has Bill Keith influenced your playing personally, and how do you think that he's changed the face of bluegrass? Tony?
Okay, well, let's see. He's had a profound influence on my playing and on many people's playing because he's the one that brought the melodic style that Alan was describing before to the fore. He played with Bill Monroe in 1963. He was the first Northern player to join Bill Monroe, and Bill Monroe was very excited to have him in the band because a large part of Bill Monroe's music was fiddle tunes, and here was a guy that could finally play fiddle tunes note for note. And there were other people playing in the so-called melodic style before Bill, but they didn't really get out there with it. And Bill was the first one who was on the Grand Ole Opry, so thousands, millions of people were hearing him play the style. And he was recording for Decca Records with Bill Monroe, so the style got out there. And 8 days after Bill Keith joined Bill Monroe, and we should mention that Bill Keith passed very recently, and it's a great loss to the bluegrass and just music community in general. So I brought up this question just to kind of honor his memory. But 8 days after he joined Bill Monroe, he's just this green northern kid suddenly thrown into Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys, and Bill went into the recording studio and recorded 8 tunes with Bill, including Devil's Dream, which is the first tune that Bill played in the melodic style. And Sailor's Hornpipe. And Salt Creek. All of which changed the face of bluegrass forever. Suddenly, I remember seeing Bill Monroe in July of 1963 when I was 14 years old, and I remember hearing, I didn't know it was Bill Keith, but hearing this banjo player with Bill Monroe, and what was it? It's not Scruggs style, what is that? And suddenly the whole banjo world changed almost overnight. So suddenly everyone could play these fiddle tunes note for note, and Bill did a lot of other things besides just that. And so for me personally, suddenly I could do this, play in this style. And when I first started taking lessons from a guy named Hal Glatzer in 1963, he somehow had already picked up this melodic style. And he showed me Devil's Dream and Sailor's Hornpipe, and suddenly, you know, it's not even that it's that hard. It's a little counterintuitive because you have to go to a lower string to get a higher note when you're playing around here. But Bill also came up with a lot of chordal things that were new for the banjo, like the 9th chord, and especially a tune called New Camptown Races, where he did the A part goes something like this. This lick right here. This is one of the most gorgeous licks ever created. And he came up with that, and then this lick here. For an A chord, no one had ever played a lick like that before. That's kind of melodic, but and then a little bend at the end. So, and those are just 2 of many, many licks. And I could go on, you know, keep saying this for hours just talking about Bill Keith. But he had a profound influence on my my playing. Right. I'll just leave it at that because we're running out of time. But Alan, how about you?
Well, of course, you know, he, just like you, I heard, being from Oklahoma, I had to hear him at a distance. Heard Devil's Dream on the radio with Bill Monroe, and that was a huge, huge moment, magical moment. And so the melodic style was real, introduced me to that you could do that. And in Oklahoma there weren't a lot of banjo players around, but there were a lot of fiddle players, so I wound up hanging around a lot of fiddle players, Byron Berline included. And so to, get any respect or notice at all, you needed to play, or I felt like I should play some of the fiddle tunes. So Bill Keith helped sort of develop that in me, show us the way. And also quarterly, you mentioned that. But another thing that he did that I thought was real cool, Byron Berline was sort of my speaker to the rest of the bluegrass world, and he had, while we were in college together, he had obtained live recordings of Bill Monroe with Bill Keith. And, Bill Keith gets credit for the fiddle tune style, which is really great, but his sort of, I won't call it exactly Scruggs style, but his roll style playing featured lots of intricate little finger twists and differences, just like you pointed out there in New Camptown Races, so that, his rolls and the notes would come out in sort of this different syncopated way that Earl didn't do, but it still had the drive and the sensibility of the Scruggs style, but it had sort of this new twist to it. It was very, very intriguing. And I always quote you, and I hope it is you that said this, but I always liked it, that you said in bluegrass, to be different, you don't have to be very different. And you mentioned that Keith added that ninth in there, and that was a really sparkling moment when I discovered that. And I won't say I've made my career on it, but it sure helped a lot. When you know that and you can add it in there. So he was incredible. And also one other thing you mentioned, him being from the North, and not only just from the North, but from a different world than all the musicians that had been in bluegrass, the Southern bands. And with Bill Keith, he sort of pulled in behind him, it seemed like to me, this whole new world of players, which included Pete Rowland and Richard Green and David Grisman, pulled in this world behind him that I was totally unaware of. And it sort of encouraged me, and I think all the younger players at the time, that they could be a part of this basically southeastern sort of musical scene. That there was a place and you could add music to it, and you didn't have to just always play it the way Earl played it or Don Marino or whatever. So it was a huge, it was the enlightenment, so to speak, of the banjo, for me anyway.
Excellent. Excellent. And Tony, when was it? I know it was recently. When was it that he passed away?
It would have probably been, I think it might have been November or something like that.
Right.
Here.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't remember exactly close to that, though, because I saw him at the IBMA in, I think, early October.
Yeah.
And maybe a month later, he passed. Late last year.
Well, clearly he's left a pretty incredible legacy behind him.
Right, and there's an interview with him on my site also, fairly lengthy,
Right.
interview, where he talks about how he developed the melodic style. And Alan's on the site also.
Yep.
Too. Fairly lengthy.
So I have a quick question from one of the online viewers. This comes from Stephen Cobham. He says, "Hi from Southport, United Kingdom. How many years does Tony feel it took him to move from beginner to intermediate to advanced, expert, etc.? Just to give us beginners an idea of what to expect over the coming years."
Nice. Hi, Stephen. How are you? Thanks for being here and joining us all the way from the UK. That is a really hard question to answer.
Yeah, I figured. That's why I threw it at you.
Almost impossible question to answer. I was very lucky. I had already started playing guitar. I was finger picking on the guitar, so I already kind of had that dexterity right and left hands. And then I fell in love with the banjo from hearing the Kingston Trio do Charlie and the MTA. So I badgered my parents to get me a long neck 5-string banjo, which I got for Christmas back in '63. And once I was struggling a little bit at first because I didn't have a teacher, and I was working out of the Pete Seeger book, which wasn't making sense to me, and there wasn't much bluegrass in there. And then I mentioned this guy, Hal Glatzer, who opened the door and turned on the light for me and showed me Lonesome Road Blues, kind of the way Eric Weisberg played it, something like that. There. And suddenly there were all these licks, like that lick, this lick was in there. And in the space of one tune, he sort of just gave me the gift of, you know, opening the door to Scruggs style, I guess you could say. And because I already had the dexterity, I kind of hit the ground running, as opposed to, you know, not really knowing any rolls or anything like that. At least my fingers could kind of do that. So, you know, I certainly started as a beginner, but I think I moved pretty quickly to an intermediate level within a year, 6 months to a year, something like that, maybe even a little sooner. And then it's hard to know what's advanced. You know, relatively early on, after a couple of years, I entered a banjo contest at the very first Roanoke Bluegrass Festival in Fincastle, Virginia. It was the first bluegrass festival. And the judges were Ralph Stanley, Lamar Greer, who played with Bill Monroe, and Bill Emerson. And I remember playing 9-pound hammer, doing something like this for the banjo contest. Something like that, and I can only picture Ralph Stanley's face hearing these fake Middle Eastern notes, and I kind of came up with the melodic style. So even as early as 1965, 2 years after I started playing, I was trying kind of some weird things. So I don't know if that made me advanced at that point, but probably within 2 or 3, 4 years, I was trying some of my own ideas, and maybe today you'd call that advanced. And it's really hard to say, you know, what exactly is advanced and exactly intermediate, but I don't know. I hope that answers your question. And Ellen, you probably have.
My experiences are not much different. I'm going to play you the first thing I learned to play on my own, along with an Earl Scruggs record. You ready? That's it.
I love it.
That's the first thing I learned on my own. And every time that would come up on the record, I would do that along with it. It was so cool, you know, that I could actually make the same sound, you know, and that was really very encouraging. But actually, when I started playing, I had to, like you, the Pete Seeger book, and I learned to play the basic strum that Pete Seeger teaches in his book, and I played that way until I wanted to play the Scruggs style. And as I listened to it on the records, I just couldn't imagine. I knew a human had done that, but I couldn't imagine me doing it. And looked around for people around Norman or Oklahoma City, and found a guy named, and some people out there might know his name, Gary Price, who makes cases and tailpieces and things, and he explained to me what the roll was. You know, well, it's these 8-note patterns. And as soon as I realized that, and I could go home and sort of created my own, you know, I could, there's 8 notes in a measure. So I just sort of figured out. He showed me this. Wow, that is really cool. And then I figured out, well, you could do these other things, and I would listen to the recording and try to glean what was going on. And that, you know, I spent a long, long time doing that. And like I say, I had played that Pete Seeger style first, and what it did that I think a lot of people early on miss out on is that it's, and I should demonstrate it. I don't know if I can do it with my picture. sort of style. What it does is it puts the melody, the rhythm, and the harmony all together. So before and in the Scruggs style, it actually kind of takes them apart and does them in a different way. But I always knew that, if I wanted to play Red River Valley, I could do that. But now you want to do it in the Scruggs style. So I knew that it was 8 notes in a measure, and I would just kind of work till I got it. And then you realize that it repeats over and over again. So at some point, I started creating my own music and my own tunes. The first tune I ever worked out on my own is this. His grandfather's clock. And so at that point, in my world, at that very moment, that was advanced. And so I became an advanced player in my little world pretty quickly. As soon as you can start creating your own stuff, to me, that's where you want to be ultimately. And then I would try to copy Earl's breaks to solos, Don Reno, big fan of Doug Dillard, Alan Shelton, Sonny Osborne, everybody. So I'd say it took, and then Bill Keith, when he came along, tried to figure all that out, and you just keep going. And now, I started out advanced, but now I'm at a high normal level. A high normal. So it takes time, it takes, that real answer is it takes as long as it takes.
Yeah. Well, we've been getting a lot of questions very similar to this one. Hey, I'm a beginner, and how do I get better faster? Or maybe I just, I've hit a plateau. And so this may sound like kind of a shameless commercial, but honestly, to any of the viewers who don't know, at the online banjo school at ArtistWorks, Tony has recorded over the past 7 years literally hundreds of lessons. And at any point working your way through these lessons, you can submit a video of yourself playing, and Tony will watch it and give you some feedback and send you a video back. And those 2 videos are paired together, and all the students can watch each other's interactions with the teacher and stuff. And we see a lot of people getting better faster because they have access to a master who can give them critique and help them from building bad habits and stuff. So this question keeps popping up, and that would be my advice to you. Paul, you've been on the site for 4 years now. You've been submitting videos to Tony, and so how have you seen improvement, and I guess what's kept you around for so long, 4 years now,
It's just that the site is very, very beneficial. When I first signed on, I thought, oh, this is cool, I'm going to have lessons from Tony Trischka. And it turns out to be a lot more than that. Like you mentioned, the video exchanges, you get to see everybody's video exchange, and every single one of those is a new lesson. So there's thousands of lessons actually on that site. So my playing has increased dramatically since I first signed up. I can go back and look at my beginning video exchange and see how horrible I was back then. And now I can play that same song much, much better, much faster, much cleaner, more musically than I ever could.
Right. Great. So those were, well, I'll try to take maybe one more question from the audience, but I had, we're getting towards the end here, and I had an important question for Greg. So Deering's released a brand new signature model banjo for Tony, and I was just wondering if you can tell us a little bit about this banjo and kind of what sets it apart. What are some of its features from some of your other banjos?
Yes, I'd be glad to. The Tony Trischka model came about because I was at Banjo Camp North and got to spend some time with Tony, and he was playing the Saratoga Star and was telling me how much he liked the inlays and asked me how I came up with those inlays. And I told him that I was inspired by studying the work of an artist named Alfonso Mocha. And Tony said, you know Alfonso Mocha? He's my favorite artist. And we got to talking about everything we knew about this artist. He's an artist from Eastern Europe that spent most of his professional career in Paris back in the Victorian and early Art Nouveau period, about 100 years ago. And Tony asked if we couldn't come up with a model, a signature model inspired by Alfonso Mocha. And Tony was very patient with us. It took us a number of years to come up with the right inspiration. And so it's just happened in the last number of months. And when he was out looking at some of the prototypes, he saw a new inlay material that we have called Astrolam in a radically different colors. And he fell in love with that, and so that's the material we're using as his inlays. And he also wanted the fingerboard gone over to 24 frets with the frets hanging over the pot. So it's a very, very different model than we've ever made before. The drum is essentially the same as all of the Tenbrooks, but with the 24 fret neck and the different inlays and the different artwork, it's very, very unique for Tony.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful instrument. Tony, how's it treating you so far?
It's I love it. Totally love it. And what Greg is mentioning is you know, those are the things I wanted. Plus, I wanted some quilted maple for the resonator. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh yeah.
Very highly figured maple. And then when it was finally ready, and I came to San Diego a while back, 4 or 5 months ago, suddenly there was all this power shell, which is abalone, up and down the neck and around the resonator. I went, whoa. And then they put the stretcher band on here, hand carved through black chrome, and it's just, and it sounds really good. Let's not forget that. It actually sounds really good. Besides all the amazing physical attributes of it, it sounds great. And I'm loving it. It feels wonderful, and having that extra 2 frets up there, you know, you can do high octaves of ground speed or high shallow good, and you just can't go to a normal store and buy that kind of thing. Activities like this you just can't hardly buy unless you get one of these.
Yeah. Well, hey, so Greg, a lot of people are asking. There's one more very important question for you. A lot of people want to know if that cat behind you is alive or not.
It's very much alive. This is Patches. We're at my daughter's apartment, and this is her cat, Patches.
There you go. All right, we just want movement. We just want
been very quiet.
Excellent. Okay, great. Well, we're kind of getting towards the end here. I'm excited to announce, first off, let me remind all the viewers the promo code, which was Banjo20. That can get you 20% off at the online Banjo school or any ArtistWorks school. I'm happy to announce Randy Mayhew, you have won 1-year membership at the online Banjo school at ArtistWorks. So congratulations. Contact us, Randy. And you'll be studying online with Tony, exchanging videos for the next year. So congratulations on that. Tony, you had a closing tune you were going to close out with, right? And then Alan possibly as well. What were you going to play, Tony?
I'll play a tune that I put on my first album back in the early 70s. It's in 7/4 time. And I wanted to kind of come up with a fiddle tune, Spugsy thing in 7/4 time. It's like in 72 or something like that, and it's called The Jig Is Up.
Very nice. And you said that was called The Jig Is Up?
The Jig Is Up.
Excellent. I like that. I like that. And then, Alan, did you have something you wanted to close us out with?
I'll play a tune called Oklahoma Bound.
Excellent. So let me just remind everybody. So the promo code was Banjo20 to get 20% off at ArtistWorks and study online, interact with these world-renowned musicians. We have some questions just real quick for Greg. Several people are asking if Deering could please put out notices on any banjo camps that are coming up. So I will leave that to you, Greg.
What was the question again?
A lot of people are just wondering if you guys can put out some notices on any upcoming banjo camps going on.
Yes, we can. We generally keep it on our website, on the calendar.
Okay.
The Kruger Brothers have one coming up. Banjo Camp North is coming up. I'll be at Banjo Camp North this year. But check the calendar on our website. We list all the banjo camps that we know about.
Cool. Okay. Great. Well, Greg, thank you so much to you for joining us and sharing some of your expertise. And thank you so much to Deering Banjo, who sponsored this. We couldn't have done it without them. They helped us get the word out, and we're so happy that you guys were so easy to work with, as always. Thank you to Alan Munde. It was incredible meeting you, and thank you to Alan Mundy's wife, Kitty, who helped a lot with the technical difficulties that we were having. She was great. So thank you to Paul Fleming for joining us, a 4-year student of Tony's at the online banjo school, Tony Trischka at ArtistWorks.com. And of course, sir, Mr. Tony Trischka, thank you for everything, my friend.
Thank you for moderating this.
It's our pleasure.
Who's here?
Yes, we do this every month now, so everyone just stay tuned for who we have coming up next month. And also, if there's any people out there that are guitar players as well, last month, January's was with Brian Sutton, our flat pick guitar player, and he had Chris Eldridge join, and we had a great conversation. Brian's dad actually joined the conversation too. So you can find that on YouTube. You'll be able to find this on YouTube later as well. So thanks for everybody who's joining in. Banjo20 for 20% off, and we'll see you guys next month for the next ArtistWorks Google Hangout. Everyone have a great day.
You too. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.